Welcome. Today, we are embarking on a very extensive analysis of the facts surrounding one of the most tragic and calculated acts of mass violence in recent U.S. history,
You are.
the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal here is to, move beyond the headlines and really explore in detail the factual record, the findings of the investigative reports, and the profound consequences that followed.
And all of that drawn directly from the source material you've provided.
Exactly.
And that's really the right approach here. I mean, for an event of this magnitude, you have to maintain an absolute focus on the documented facts.
It's paramount.
It is. So we'll establish a clear, objective timeline. We'll examine the meticulous planning involved, review the formal conclusions from law enforcement, and also identify the systemic failures and, importantly, the moments of profound heroism that occurred on October 1st, 2017.
And before we get into those details, I think we have to acknowledge the sheer scale of this.
We do.
This incident remains the deadliest mass shooting by a lone gunman in U.S. history. That's an essential anchor for this entire discussion.
The figures are they're overwhelming. The final official death toll, it rose to 61 people, and that includes the perpetrator.
Right.
And beyond that, approximately 867 people were injured. And we need to remember that over 413 of those injuries, they were from direct gunshot wounds or shrapnel.
That really speaks to the severity.
It does.
And as we get into the details, the who, what, when, where, and how were left, even all these years later, with the most haunting element of all.
The why.
The why. The motive is still officially undetermined, and that's a critical detail that just shapes the entire legacy of this investigation. So let's start by establishing the scene, the location. Because the choice of venue and the firing position, it says so much about the perpetrator's calculated intent.
It really does.
This all took place on the Las Vegas Strip, but the specific target was the Route 91 Harvest Country Music Festival.
That's correct. The concert itself was held at the Las Vegas Village, which is a large, open-air, 15-acre lot.
So very exposed.
Very exposed. And on that Sunday night, the final night of the festival, there were over 22,000 people there.
Wow.
And the shooter, Stephen Paddock, he secured what was really the ultimate strategic advantage by choosing the Mandalay Bay Hotel.
A 43-story building, just towering over the area.
Exactly. It provided incredible altitude. And Paddock, he was using 2 connected suites on the 32nd floor.
And that gave him a clear, unchallenged, long-range view.
Looking down directly over the festival grounds.
Which were about, almost 500 yards away?
Roughly 490 yards. So this wasn't just a random spot. This was a deliberate choice to maximize lethality.
A tactical choice.
A tactical choice, absolutely. It leveraged a vulnerability that's, inherent in these large, open-air public events that are right next to massive buildings.
So let's turn to Paddock himself.
Okay.
He was 64 years old, lived in Mesquite, Nevada. His professional background was varied.
It was. He was a former postal worker, an IRS agent, an auditor, before he moved into real estate investment. And that provided him with a pretty comfortable lifestyle.
And his record with law enforcement was basically clean.
Yeah, aside from minor traffic citations, nothing.
But the source material notes this incredibly dark family background. And while it's not a direct cause, it certainly adds a chilling context to who he was.
It's a profound element. His father, Benjamin Paddock, was a convicted bank robber. He actually managed to land himself on the FBI's most wanted list for 8 years.
8 years.
Between 1969 and 1977, he was diagnosed as psychopathic and violent.
Did investigators find any link between that history and Stephen Paddock's actions?
No. They found no evidence to suggest it directly motivated him, but it provides a highly unusual backdrop for a man who, on the surface, seemed like a successful, reserved businessman.
What seemed to define his later years, though, especially in Las Vegas, was this obsession with high-stakes gambling.
Absolutely. He was a familiar face, a valued patron at casinos. He mostly focused on single-player video poker.
Right.
And his habit was intense enough, we're talking high dollar amounts per hand, to earn him the highest level of complimentary perks or comps.
And those comps included the very rooms he used for the attack.
Exactly. The free, connected 32nd floor suites were part of his high roller package, so the very system designed to reward high-value customers ultimately and, tragically, facilitated the attack.
So on one hand, he's successful enough at this very isolated type of gambling to get free luxury access.
Right.
But on the other hand, the reports paint a picture of significant financial stress right before the incident. How do those things square up?
That is one of the biggest contradictions in his profile. And it speaks to this meticulous wrapping up of affairs that we see in the sources. Paddock had reportedly lost a substantial amount of his wealth in the 2 years before the shooting.
A substantial amount.
But, and this is a chilling detail, investigators found he methodically paid off all of his outstanding gambling debts right before October 1st.
That detail is key, isn't it?
It is.
Because a person planning to live on, they try to win money back or they just walk away.
Right.
But a person preparing for a final act, they make sure all those loose ends are tied up, especially debts to casinos.
Precisely. It suggests a final clearing of the slate, a deliberate financial closure that aligns perfectly with the suicide he ultimately committed. And on top of that, his personal life was decaying.
His long-term girlfriend noted a change.
A distinct deterioration in his personal demeanor over the year before the attack. She was out of the country at the time, but her testimony was crucial.
And what kind of changes did she observe? Anything that might indicate, a spiraling mental state?
She described him as becoming more and more distant. She noted that their relationship wasn't intimate anymore in that final year. Paddock was known to be isolated, a heavy drinker, and reportedly had what investigators later described as germophobic tendencies. He had these strong, unusual reactions to certain smells.
So it paints a picture of intense isolation.
A slow burn mental deterioration, perhaps, that culminated in this just inexplicable act of violence. The disconnect between his outward success, earning those comps, and his inner turmoil is a major analytical point.
When we look at the preparation for this, the word meticulous just doesn't even seem to cover it.
It barely scratches the surface, no.
This wasn't a quick plan. It spanned months, and it involved detailed reconnaissance of multiple targets.
His planning was tactical. It was almost clinical. We know Paddock repeatedly cased the Las Vegas Village from the Mandalay Bay about a month prior.
He stayed in a different room then, just to map it out.
Just to map out the sight lines. But his planning wasn't just limited to Vegas.
No, the sources show he was scouting large public gatherings all over the country.
That's right. He researched the Lollapalooza Festival in Chicago. He even reserved a room overlooking the festival grounds in August 2017.
But he didn't end up using it.
He didn't use that room, no. He also stayed at the Ogden in downtown Las Vegas in late September, which gave him a view of the Life is Beautiful festival.
So this proves he was systematically searching. He was looking for the perfect spot.
The perfect high-elevation open-air venue to maximize casualties. And he settled on the Route 91 Harvest Festival as his final target.
And his digital footprint, his online searches, they confirm this aggressive research.
They do. His internet search history from mid-September.
Yeah.
It's like a window into his tactical mindset.
What kind of things was he searching for?
Terms like SWAT weapons, ballistics chart 308, and very specifically SWAT Las Vegas.
He was studying the police response.
He was, and this is where it gets really chilling. He also searched, do police use explosives?
Wow.
This is a profound detail. It suggests he was anticipating law enforcement breaching his position, and he was gathering tactical information to, potentially counter or delay that response.
The logistics of just moving his arsenal into the Mandalay Bay rooms. It's astounding. And frankly, it represents a massive security failure.
It does.
He brought in 22 suitcases.
This is the operational vulnerability that just stands out the most. Over 7 days, starting September 25th, Paddock used the privilege he had as a high roller, the complimentary bell service, to move those 22 large suitcases into his connected suites.
Room 32, 135, and 32, 134.
The same ones. And he did it over 7 days. 5 bags on day 1, 7 on day 2, and so on.
Just think about how routine that must have seemed.
Exactly. The bellmen, they're trained to be helpful, to respect guest privacy. And here they are, moving these heavy, opaque containers over nearly a week.
And for a high roller, maybe that much luggage isn't even that unusual.
It's normalized in that kind of high-end hotel environment. No single person flagged the accumulation of 22 pieces of luggage in one guest's room as suspicious.
And then by September 30th, he puts up the do not disturb signs,
guaranteeing himself total privacy to assemble everything.
And what an arsenal it was. I mean, when investigators finally got into that room, those 24 firearms, what do they tell us about his strategy?
The arsenal confirmed a strategy of versatility and sustained firepower. The vast majority were high-powered semi-automatic rifles.
All legally purchased.
All legally purchased across 4 states, Nevada, California, Texas, and Utah. The sources break them down into 2 main types he used.
All right.
14 AR-15 style rifles and 8 AR-10 style rifles.
So for anyone listening, what's the practical difference between those two types of rifles
Yeah.
in the context of this long-range attack?
Well, the difference is mostly in the caliber and the roll. The AR-15s, they fire the smaller, lighter .223 caliber rounds.
Okay.
These were the ones fitted with the bump stocks. They were designed for maximum sustained rate of fire into the mass of the crowd at that, relatively closer distance of 490 yards.
And the AR-10s?
The 8 AR-10s fire the heavier, larger .308 caliber rounds. These rifles were generally mounted on bipods equipped with telescopic sights.
So for more precision.
Exactly. They were likely intended for more precise, long-range targeting, maybe against first responders or specific infrastructure. So he was equipped for both. Sustained, rapid spraying, and targeted long-range fire.
And that sheer rate of fire was, of course, because of modifications. Let's talk about the bump stocks. They were found on all 14 of the AR-15s.
The bump stock modification is absolutely critical here. It uses the natural recoil of a semi-automatic weapon to rapidly bump the rifle's trigger against your stationary finger.
So it accelerates the rate of fire.
To near automatic levels. The sources cite that this allowed him to fire about 90 rounds in just 10 seconds.
90 rounds in 10 seconds.
Yeah. And this is what created that machine gun-like roar that everyone heard. It explains the devastating efficiency of the attack.
Beyond the guns, he also went to great lengths to get specialized ammunition, specifically tracer rounds.
He did. Paddock had actually failed to buy tracer rounds from a licensed dealer at first, but he successfully bought them from a private seller at a gun show in Phoenix, Arizona.
And what would those have done for him?
Well, tracer rounds, they have a small pyrotechnic charge that leaves a glowing visual trail, so it would have allowed him to correct his aim, to adjust for wind and distance in the darkness of the night.
It just highlights again his determined resourcefulness. He's circumventing standard channels to get tactical gear.
It does. And the preparation wasn't just confined to the room. Investigators found evidence of explosive components in his vehicle.
Suggesting a potential follow-up plan or an escape plan?
It's deeply disturbing. In Paddock's SUV, authorities found a significant cache. Ammonium nitrate, which is often used in homemade bombs,
Right.
along with 1,600 more rounds of ammunition and 50 pounds of tannerite, which is a binary explosive.
And what did they determine from that?
They determined that while he had all these materials and clearly had nefarious intent, he hadn't actually assembled a functioning explosive device. But the implication is clear. The arsenal extended beyond just the rifle attack.
The attack itself was shockingly short, about 10 minutes.
Roughly 10 minutes, from 10:05 p.m. to 10:01 p.m. on October 1st, while Jason Aldean was performing.
But the sequence of events, right before that barrage, that became highly controversial in the weeks and months that followed.
That sequence centers on the confrontation between Paddock and the security guard, Jesus Campos.
Right.
Campos was sent to the 32nd floor for a totally unrelated open-door alarm, and he discovered Paddock had barricaded a door with an L-shaped metal bracket screwed right into the frame.
And as he got closer,
After he reported the barricade, he approached Paddock's suite and he heard rapid drilling sounds.
so Paddock realized he'd been discovered.
And he responded immediately and violently. Correct. At about 10:05 p.m., Paddock fired roughly 35 bullets through his suite door,
Hitting Campos.
striking Campos in the right thigh. Campos took cover. He immediately radioed hotel dispatch, reported he'd been shot.
And then the maintenance worker, Stephen Schuck, arrived,
Right at that moment, yes.
Yeah.
He was there to address the barricaded door.
putting him directly in the line of fire.
And Campos urgently warned Schuck to take cover. Schuck then used his own radio to call hotel dispatch, confirming the active shooting and telling them to call the police.
And this is where that critical issue, the timeline confusion, really started.
It is, because the initial police statements suggested Campos was shot after the concert attack had already begun.
Then the whole story shifted, didn't it? Suggesting he was shot a full 6 minutes before Paddock started firing on the crowd,
Exactly.
which fueled immense public confusion and a lot of conspiracy theories. How did law enforcement end up addressing that critical 6-minute gap?
Well, the discrepancy was huge. The 6-minute gap was initially based on a security log entry time, 9:59 p.m., that was mistakenly reported as the time Campos was shot.
When in reality,
In reality, that was the time he discovered the barricaded door.
yeah.
The official timeline was eventually clarified to confirm that Campos was shot essentially moments before Paddock opened fire on the concert audience.
But the damage was done by then, wasn't it?
The damage was done. Sheriff Lombardo had to spend significant time in press conferences addressing this wave of conspiracy theories, some suggesting a massive cover-up involving MGM, the police, the FBI.
And how did he try to explain it?
He dismissed the conspiracy claims. He said no one was trying to hide anything, but that the sheer volume of information just required constant review and clarification. He called the shifts minute changes that are inherent in trying to draw an accurate picture from chaotic initial reports.
But for the public, especially those skeptical of official stories, that confusion, it remains a lasting point of controversy.
It does, regardless of the final police findings.
So while that confrontation was happening upstairs, Paddock started the main attack on the crowd below.
He used a hammer to smash out 2 windows in his connected suites, which gave him a clear firing aperture. And from there, he began firing his rifles. Over that 10-minute period, Paddock unleashed over 1,000 rounds into the festival crowd.
1,000 rounds.
Often in relentless bursts of 80 to 100 rounds at a time.
And the sources described the initial reaction of the crowd as, well, confusion.
And that was the immediate devastating tragedy. So many concertgoers at first mistook the rapid, high-volume sound for fireworks.
Right.
Which gave Paddock critical seconds to inflict massive damage before people even realized they were under attack.
And compounding that tragedy, the security fence.
The fence around the concrete lot tragically hindered the rapid, disorganized flight of the concertgoers. It effectively trapped them as the barrage continued.
Paddock also tried to target vital infrastructure. He aimed at the nearby airport fuel tank.
That's right. He fired 8 bullets at a large jet fuel storage tank at McCarran Airport, about 2,000 feet away.
And one of them penetrated the tank.
It did. But the fuel, which is mostly kerosene, it didn't ignite.
Why not?
Well, authorities concluded it was due to the chemical composition of jet fuel. It needs much higher temperatures or greater atmospheric compression than a bullet strike can provide to explode.
So his intent to cause a secondary disaster was there.
The intent was there, absolutely. Fortunately, the physics of the situation prevented it.
So let's track the police response. Despite the immediate reports from Campos and Schuck, identifying the source of the fire was clearly difficult.
It was incredibly complex. Officers at first were getting multiple confusing reports. Shots seemed to be coming from Mandalay Bay, the Luxor next door, even the festival grounds themselves.
And there were reports of other shooters, too.
Erroneous reports, yes. Active shooters at other resorts along the Strip, which forced first responders to split their attention. But, crucially, at 10:12 p.m., only 7 minutes after the shooting began, 2 officers on the 31st floor correctly reported hearing automatic gunfire coming from the floor directly above them.
But even after they confirmed the source, the response to actually breach Paddock's room was significantly delayed.
It was a long, anxious wait. Officers arrived on the 32nd floor at 10:17 p.m. They immediately met the wounded security guard, Campos, who pointed them to the exact room.
So they were right outside the door.
They were right there. But they spent the next hour focusing on clearing and evacuating all the guests from the surrounding rooms and hallways.
A necessary safety measure, of course.
A necessary measure, which finished by 10:55 p.m.
But the final confrontation, the breach, that didn't happen until 11:20 p.m.
Exactly. Over an hour after officers reached the floor, the police team used explosives to breach the main door of room 32-135.
And Paddock was found dead.
Dead on the floor from a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the mouth. He used a .38 caliber revolver. Police then breached the connected room and confirmed the suspect was down at 11:27 p.m.
So the entire active shooting phase, from the first shot to the suspect's death, was about 75 minutes of total response time.
Even though the firing itself only lasted for 10 minutes.
Yes. Now we have to turn to the devastating impact of those 10 minutes and the immense challenge the Las Vegas trauma centers faced. The official death toll, tragically, it had to be updated years after the initial incident.
The physical toll wasn't immediate for everyone. While 58 people died that night, or very soon after, the official count eventually reached 61, not including Paddock.
And that's because 2 victims died from their injuries years later.
Yes. One in 2019 and one in 2020. They succumbed to complications from their gunshot wounds. It just illustrates the long, painful shadow cast by these events.
The victims themselves, they ranged so widely in age and background. It really reflected the crowd at a major concert.
It was a broad cross-section of people,
Hmm.
36 women and 22 men from age 20 all the way to 67. They came from 13 different U.S. states and from Canada.
It was a national and an international tragedy.
It really was. It impacted off-duty officers from Las Vegas and Manhattan Beach Police who were just there as concertgoers.
With over 867 people injured, the hospital infrastructure was just immediately overwhelmed. What were the biggest systemic issues noted in the trauma response?
The initial response was chaotic just because of the sheer volume. University Medical Center, UMC, which is the Level I Trauma Center, and Sunrise Hospital, the Level II Center, were inundated. Sunrise, in particular, treated 199 patients, with 150 of them arriving in the first 40 minutes. But there were two key systemic problems that emerged from the sources.
The first one being transportation.
Yes. Interstate 15, which is the most direct route from the venue to UMC, was closed. That complicated ambulance and private vehicle transport. But the second issue, the miscommunication, was even more critical for distributing resources.
What happened?
An erroneous emergency services announcement went out about an hour into the crisis, and it declared UMC had reached capacity and was on diversion.
Meaning they should send incoming patients elsewhere.
Exactly. So UMC was mistakenly cut off from receiving critical patients.
How long did that last?
That confusion persisted for hours, and it led to the majority of patients who weren't in ambulances being diverted to Sunrise, even though UMC still had available capacity.
That's a serious communication failure.
It is. It raised serious questions about the protocol for verifying and getting out critical status updates during a mass casualty event.
On the community side, the response was immediate, and it focused heavily on blood donation.
The outpouring of support was just overwhelming. Lines stretched for blocks, people waiting 6 hours or more to donate blood the next morning. The local blood bank saw an influx of 800 units in the first few days.
But the subsequent analysis of the sources revealed something interesting about that.
An important insight into disaster response. Over 15% of the blood donated locally in Las Vegas went unused.
That's a surprising statistic. It raises a critical question about these generalized appeals for blood.
It does. It prompted a real reflection on whether these massive, immediate, generalized blood donation calls after mass shootings are the most efficient use of resources.
Because there are specific types and processes needed for trauma care.
Right. The true need is often for pre-staged blood reserves and strategic distribution rather than a massive, spontaneous influx. It was a crucial learning point from this event.
Amidst all the chaos and the failures, the sources detail these profound individual acts of courage, from civilians, from off-duty personnel.
And this is where the human spirit really shines through in the material.
It is.
These acts are essential to highlight, to move beyond just the statistics. We can look at Brittany Spear, an EMT from UCLA who was just attending the concert.
And what did she do?
She received the Medal of Courage for immediately setting up a triage area and providing life-saving treatment to victims while the gunfire was still active overhead. She was stabilizing patients before official medical teams could even get to them.
Or the example of Martin Heffernan, a civilian honored for protecting others.
Martin Heffernan, an assistant scoutmaster for the Boy Scouts of America, he received the honor award with crossed palms. He displayed immense personal bravery. He ran back into the line of fire repeatedly to move injured and panicked people out of the kill zone and toward safety.
Risking his own life to save others.
And we also saw incredible responses from off-duty military personnel who they immediately reverted to their training.
That training proved invaluable.
It did. U.S. Army soldier Matthew Kobos received the Single Act of Heroism Award in 2018. He was captured in that viral photograph shielding a victim, and he was instrumental in providing critical first aid.
And there was a British soldier as well.
British soldier trooper Ross Woodward was awarded the Queen's Commendation for Bravery for his deliberate decision to advance toward the danger, moving people to safety and treating casualties under direct fire.
The coordination among personnel from different branches, even while they're off duty, is remarkable.
It speaks to a shared instinct for service. U.S. Marines Don Austin Cox and Stomp Michael Vura, both helicopter mechanics, they received the Navy and Marine Corps Medal.
Which is the highest non-combat decoration for heroism.
That's right. They braved intense gunfire, not just shielding victims, but using their training to move injured people out of the line of fire and help stabilize them.
And finally, the response from vacationing law enforcement officers.
They added crucial, immediate structure to the chaos. Absolutely. Several San Diego Police Department officers and detectives who were on vacation, they received the Medal of Valor.
What did they do?
They used their training to establish escape routes, to shield civilians, and they used their medical training to triage and treat the wounded. This ad hoc but highly trained civilian response was a crucial element in reducing the final casualty count.
Once the immediate crisis was over, the 1 October investigation began. This was a joint effort between the FBI and the ATF.
Right. They began the forensic analysis of Paddock's actions and his intent.
And what did the physical evidence in the suite tell us about his approach?
The physical evidence confirmed his tactical mindset. Investigators immediately found that Paddock had installed surveillance cameras both inside and outside the hotel rooms,
Specifically positioned to monitor anyone approaching.
particularly law enforcement. This again confirms he was anticipating a police breach.
But the sources noted a crucial distinction about those cameras.
Yes, they were not set to record.
So their purpose was purely for real-time observation.
Exactly. Real-time tactical observation and self-defense, to give him a warning and time to respond, not to document his final act.
Perhaps the most chilling physical artifact he left behind was that handwritten document. It comes the closest, I think, to defining his final calculation.
The handwritten note found on the nightstand. It's arguably the most insightful piece of evidence about his methodology, even if it says nothing about his motive.
Because it wasn't a manifesto.
It wasn't a manifesto. It was a technical document. It detailed his precise, meticulous calculations for factors like distance to the target, the wind speed, and the bullet trajectory correction he would need from the 32nd floor down to the concert venue.
That detail just elevates the act from random violence to an engineered atrocity. He was adjusting for the physics of the long shot.
It underscores the clinical, completely dehumanized nature of his plan. He treated human lives as variables in a physics problem.
Right.
It shows months of planning culminated in a final, highly technical execution strategy.
There was some early speculation, I think, from Sheriff Lombardo that Paddock might have intended to escape.
There was, yeah, citing a bulletproof vest and a breathing apparatus found nearby.
But since he died by suicide, that planned escape theory, it just remains speculative,
Yeah.
based only on unused equipment.
Correct. The ultimate conclusion of the investigation was really focused on confirming the methodology and eliminating all these other theories.
Which brings us back to the timeline confusion. The police had to decisively counter those allegations of a cover-up.
They did. The sheer complexity of sorting out the hotel security logs versus the actual on-the-ground police movements, it provided fertile ground for public distrust.
Law enforcement was under immense pressure to finalize their narrative.
And Sheriff Lombardo stood firm. He confirmed that the 10-month investigation found zero evidence of a conspiracy or a second gunman. Paddock acted alone.
So after 10 months of exhaustive investigation, including help from the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, what was the final, definitive conclusion on his motive?
And this is the enduring mystery. It's the most frustrating aspect of the case. Lombardo stated it very clearly. What we have not been able to definitively answer is why Stephen Paddock committed this act.
He left no manifesto, no suicide note.
Nothing. No evidence of ideological ties, nothing to explain his actions. The FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit later confirmed this lack of clarity in January 2019, concluding that there was no single or clear motivating factor.
We should briefly note the arrest of Douglas Haig, the ammunition supplier, just to put his role into context.
Right. Haig was arrested after his fingerprints were found on unfired armor-piercing ammunition in Paddock's suite. He was an unlicensed ammunition manufacturer and seller.
But his arrest didn't shed any light on the motive.
Not at all. His conviction in 2020 for illegal manufacturing just confirmed Paddock's determined sourcing methods, but it didn't tell us anything about why he did it.
In the immediate aftermath, in that vacuum of a clear motive or definitive information, the internet was just flooded with damaging misinformation. It created a real crisis for digital platforms.
This incident became a case study in how fake news accelerates when there's a vacuum of fact. The sources detail how a 4chan thread falsely identifying the shooter and claiming he was a registered Democrat was amplified.
And this false information was briefly featured in Google's top stories section.
It was. And circulated widely by sites with very low editorial standards.
And foreign actors and terrorist groups also tried to capitalize on the confusion.
Exactly. The Islamic State group falsely claimed Paddock as their soldier. They even gave him a name, Abu Abdulbar al-Amriki, a claim the FBI instantly and firmly debunked.
Right, they found no evidence of any connection.
None at all. And on top of that, you had conspiracy theories about a second gunman shooting from a different hotel being widely circulated.
And the human consequence of all this.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking for the survivors.
It was devastating. Many survivors found themselves victimized a second time. They were falsely accused online of being crisis actors.
And they received death threats.
Death threats on social media platforms. And this forced serious scrutiny onto companies like Google and Facebook. YouTube specifically had to adjust its search algorithm to prioritize authoritative news sources because conspiracy videos were just dominating the initial search results.
Moving from information integrity to legislative responses, the attack immediately put immense focus on the bump stock.
The bump stock became the flashpoint for the gun control debate. The sheer efficiency of that device in mimicking automatic fire led to a rapid bipartisan push for regulation.
And initially, even the National Rifle Association supported that.
Initially, yes, the NRA supported administrative regulation of the device.
And the policy changes started almost immediately at the state level.
Massachusetts was the first state to ban bump stocks in November 2017. The federal response followed later. In December 2018, the U.S. Justice Department enacted a rule federally banning them.
It classified them as machine guns under existing statutes.
That's right. And it required owners to destroy or surrender them by March 2019. This was widely seen as the direct intended legislative legacy of the Las Vegas shooting.
But that legacy was significantly challenged, and then it was overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court in June of 2024.
It was.
We need to understand the technical legal reasoning behind that reversal.
The Supreme Court's ruling, it hinged entirely on the statutory definition of a machine gun under the applicable federal law.
Okay.
The law defines a machine gun as a weapon that can fire more than one shot by a single function of the trigger.
And the court ruled that a bump stock doesn't meet that definition.
Exactly, because a bump stock requires the user to maintain forward pressure on the barrel, and it uses the recoil to reset and re-engage the trigger multiple times, rather than holding the trigger down for continuous fire. It does not meet that technical definition.
So the court acknowledged the deadly capability, but ruled that the existing law just failed to categorize it as an illegal machine gun.
Precisely. Justice Alito, while he concurred with the majority, made a point of noting that Congress retains the complete authority to amend the law to explicitly include bump stocks, should they choose to do so.
Which means the legislative debate is far from over.
Far from over.
Shifting to the legal liability of the venue, the Mandalay Bay Hotel faced significant lawsuits. What was the central argument from the victims' lawyers?
The central argument from hundreds of victims was negligence. The lawsuits, filed starting in November 2017, argued the hotel was negligent for allowing Paddock to bring that vast arsenal 22 suitcases into his room and for failing to respond quickly enough after Campos was shot.
MGM Resorts' response to these lawsuits was highly controversial, particularly their use of a post-9/11 federal law.
It was explosive in terms of public relations. In July 2018, MGM countersued hundreds of victims, citing the 2002 Safety Act.
A law designed to shield companies providing anti-terrorism technologies from liability.
Right. And MGM essentially argued that their security measures qualified under this act, which would shield them from negligence claims related to a mass casualty event.
That strategy, using a counterterrorism law to protect a hotel from a lone shooter liability, drew immense scrutiny. What was the ultimate resolution?
The controversy was likely a factor in driving a settlement. MGM eventually reached a substantial $800 million settlement with the victims' families.
And that was approved in September 2020.
It was. It provided compensation, and importantly, it avoided what would have been protracted, emotionally draining public trials.
Finally, what were the long-term physical changes made in Las Vegas to acknowledge the tragedy?
The Mandalay Bay Resort made a quiet but significant gesture. They renumbered their floors, skipping the 32nd floor entirely.
Paddock's 2 connected suites.
Rooms 32-135 and 32-134 have been permanently sealed off. They're inaccessible to guests. And more importantly, the site of the festival itself is being transformed.
The land is being dedicated to remembrance.
MGM donated 2 acres of the concert lot for a permanent memorial to the victims and survivors. The rest of the lot was sold in 2022. And a committee has selected 5 finalists for the design of the memorial, ensuring there will be a lasting, dedicated place of remembrance.
It's also important to note that tragic psychological ripple effect.
It is. The sources confirm some survivors of the Las Vegas attack were also present at the November 2018 mass shooting in Thousand Oaks, California.
And one of those dual survivors tragically died in the Thousand Oaks attack. Our analysis confirms this deep contradiction at the heart of the 1st October tragedy. an act that required immense logistical planning, tactical preparation, a sophisticated arsenal, all executed with clinical precision, yet entirely devoid of a known motive.
And that absence of the why is what makes Taddock's legacy so unsettling. If we connect this event to the bigger picture, the aftermath really demonstrates the severe challenges facing modern society.
The immediate failure of information integrity.
The necessity of critical self-assessment and emergency response, and the difficult ongoing legislative and judicial battles over firearms regulation, especially for devices designed to accelerate casualty rates.
We discussed earlier those profound contradictions in Paddock's financial and personal life. The fact that he was rapidly losing so much wealth, yet meticulously paid off all his gambling debts right before. It stands in stark contrast to his increasing isolation and emotional distance.
That detail of calculated closure, combined with the fact that he used his high roller status to camouflage the movement of 22 weapon-filled suitcases into the hotel over 7 days, it just highlights the system's failure to recognize an engineered threat hiding in plain sight.
So given everything we've explored, the debt resolution, the wealth loss, the emotional distance, and that chilling multi-day use of routine hotel privilege, what stands out to you as the most chilling element of this highly calculated act? It's a tragedy whose full scope of intent remains elusive.
Acknowledging the facts and the implications of this event is crucial for future understanding.
Thank you for joining us for this candid and detailed analysis of the source material. Thanks for listening.